Welcome back to an all-new episode of Daphne's Detention. Welcome back, Internet friends. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Daphne's Detention. Today we will be going over the Jack and Lilly Sullivan case. Jack and Lilly Sullivan has been missing since May 2nd, 2025. We are going to dive deep into this case. I have a bunch of stuff to go over with you. So I have some really interesting information for all of you. You know, I've been following Jack and Lily's case since the day they went missing from their home in PICTOU, Nova Scotia, right? And I have some details that I want to present to you, some information that you might look at things with clear eyes, some more understanding. But before we get started into this video, I want to make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. We are on our way to 17,000 subscribers. I would really appreciate that. So this is Jack and Lilly. Their beautiful faces right here. And I want to address some stuff, right? After Jack and Lilly disappeared on May 2nd, 2025, their stepdad made a comment that same day that Malaya Brooks Murray, their bio mom, had handed the children off in the morning of May 2nd and handed them off, right? Handed them off to somebody, but somehow he didn't have details of who she handed them off to. Soon after that, a third cousin on Malaya Brooks Murray's side came out online and started to give a theory that Malaya had given her two children away to protect them from some people, right? To protect them from Daniel. Anyways, she had given them to some distant relatives of the Native community. This theory was turned around to she gave them to some bad people, right? Or to pay a rug debt. Yet, Janie McKenzie, the property owner over on 1407 Gairloch Road, where Lilly and Jack disappeared from, says she heard Malaya and all three kids go to the end of the road. This was from the third cousin. This was her words, right? This started out as she heard shushing coming from a woman to hearing Malaya shushing the kids to be quiet to no shushing at all. She only heard the kids. She only heard the children, yet there are messages from her son, Daniel Martell, saying that his mom did hear shushing that morning. Like I'm about to tell you, you can see how this story has changed so many times, right? Like the rest of the statements made, my questions are as followed. If this is true, then why, how, and who? Right? So stick with me here. How did Janie know Malaya had all three children that morning walking to the end of the road if she supposedly didn't see them? Think about that for a minute. How was she so sure that Malaya had all three children and walked to the end of the road if she did not see them? I want you to comment below. Another question that I have, why did Janie go back to dozing off if this seemed odd to her? If you heard someone in your yard shushing children, wouldn't you get up? Especially if your dog was barking, because we were told the dog was barking. Now, RCMP, we've looked at the documents, right? We've dug into them. We've been talking about them. I even got the most recent unredacted information for you guys and showed it on my channel a couple days ago. If you have not seen that, I will put the playlist up in the corner at the end of this video and feel free to go watch that. So RCMP checked their digital footprints, all three adults on the property, right? They have done a thorough investigation on this case. Then why hasn't why hasn't the missing persons case, talking about Jack and Lily's case, been updated to an abduction or Amber Alert? That's another question I have. If they had some type of, some type of evidence that showed that Malaya had given the kids off, right? Some might say, well, family isn't considered an abduction if the mother gives her children to someone. Well, I'm sorry to say, yes, it is. Since now the RCMP has went through great strengths to search for these two missing children, Jack and Lilly Sullivan, and focused on the area. So the RCMP mainly focused on the area surrounding their home. They even brought in human remains dogs after 5 months that they had been missing, right? Guys, stay with me because in a moment, I'm going to show you some information that is going to blow your mind. Just stay with me. These are my questions that I have, and I think they're valuable questions. Okay, so the third cousin said Daniel admitted to driving around on May 1st, right? Or you could say May 2nd, early hours, around partying that night, which is in correspondence to what our two neighbors said close by. But there is no evidence of this because there's no evidence. There's no surveillance that surveils the road, right? If this third cousin is speaking to Malaya's non-native side, now listen to this, right? If this third cousin is speaking to Malaya's non-native side, which is Malaya's mother's side, right? Her mother's side is non-native. Her father is the native. How is he allegedly getting information on Malaya's non-native side based on Malaya's native side? Think about that for a minute. How are you getting information that Malaya had given Jack and Lilly to some distant relatives on her native side if you're not even speaking to that side? So that's where I'm confused, right? Also, why would Malaya file a false report if she could, you know what I mean? She just gave the children to someone to be safe. Why would she file a false report? Think about this. If it was just as easy as giving the children to somebody to stay safe while she was trying to get out of the house. Next question. The third cousin I'm talking about admitted that Jack and Lilly were being abused and neglected. Why would the said person believe a word that comes from persons, talking about the people on the property, who treated Jack and Lilly this way? What makes these people reputable? Think about it for a minute. He admitted that Jack and Lilly were being neglected and abused. Something he even said that the children didn't even get to eat. How does he know this? From other family members, perhaps, on Malaya's non-native side, on her mother's side? So why would you trust words from these people that allegedly abused or neglected Jack and Lilly? Why? Just honest question here. Got some more. RCMP won't even recognize this third cousin's statements, right? And by their own words, by this person's own words, threatened to arrest him for obstruction. Why would we continue to notice, to entertain his statements? Just a question, right? If the RCMP won't even entertain it, why should we? Another question. Why hasn't there been any loose lips if the children had been taken or given to somebody? There is a $150,000 reward, and surely someone would speak up by now. Is Malaya that important, right? Is she paying these people to be hush hush if they're her family members? Now, bad people, usually rug dealers don't take children for non payment. Just FYI. All right, let's see. Another question. RCMP stated to this said third cousin that they know what has happened and don't need anything else from him. Also, they just won't recognize his claims, right? Why should people continue to entertain this conspiracy of the children that they were handed off? It's a valuable question. Next question. Malaya was trying to think of possible scenarios, right? So this was mentioned that she kept changing it from they walked off to please issue an Amber Alert to her ex boyfriend took them, right? The children's bio father. In my opinion, those three statements right there, that when she changed her statements, right, it's completely normal to keep thinking of different things on what would have happened to your children. That is normal because you're trying to figure out what could have happened, especially that evening after they had been searching all day, talking about the searchers, the RCMP, after helicopters, drones, dogs, all of that, right? So that's why she changed her rhetoric throughout the first day into Saturday. Question. If RCMP knew that Malaya handed Jack and Lilly to a family for safety, for their safety, then why doesn't Malaya have custody of Meadow by now? Think about that. If Malaya didn't commit a crime and got her children to safety, then why doesn't she have her third child, Meadow? Why is Meadow still in the care of the CAS, the Children's Aid Society? Even if she lives close to her third daughter, why doesn't she have her? Actually, why does she have custody of her? Why? Next question. If the RCMP knew that Malaya handed Jack and Lilly to a family member for their safety, yeah. Why? I don't understand that one, right? The one with why didn't she have custody? Next question. What is the purpose of coming out on YouTube for this third cousin? If it's a life or death situation, as you said, for the children, Jack and Lilly, why not just take it up with the RCMP? Why do you need to try to convince people on YouTube? I don't understand. Next, if it's true that Malaya handed the kids off, why would the family go searching for them? Such as even Malaya's mother, who is a nurse, right? And I'm not saying, nurses lie and stuff like that. She's a nurse at the hospital, people that work all the time, right? Why would her mother, her best friend, her stepsister, her cousin, and their partners go out and search in the cold and wet, along with the other grandmother, go and search if they knew where the children are, right? Last question. Why did this third cousin say he didn't know about the kids missing later on? Like, right? Until later on. Yet on X, it shows a few screenshots of Jack and Lily's disappearance from the RCMP. Right? If you're close to the great grandmother, excuse me, and the grandmother, how did you not know that these are the two children? that we're missing. Just curious. Okay, so we're going to get started. We are about to get started, you guys. Check this out. And I'm going to show you something really odd here in a minute. It's going to make you shake your head. Yeah, it's going to make you shake your head. All right. So this is what you're going to be looking at right here, right? And this is very interesting. This is called False Allegations of Child Abduction. This is a handbook for law enforcement and investigators, right? The Behavioral Analysis Unit 3, component of the FBI's National Center for the Analysis of a Violent Crime, provides behavioral-based investigative and operational support to law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation of missing, abducted children, child homicides, SA of children, and other criminal acts targeting child victims. Operational services are supported and enhanced by Behavioral's research program, staff members in conjunction with the government and academic entities, right? Now, yes, this is by our behavioral science FBI here in the United States. Canada is not much different. They also have behavioral science working with the RCMP. Okay? So it goes on to say that the research is refined into investigative techniques applied to improve law enforcement effectiveness against criminals who offend against children. The research project, it basically focuses on the problems of parents and other caregivers who are responsible for the death of a child under their care and then falsely claim that the child is missing or has become abducted. The child's death can be the result of a planned unaliving, chronic physical abuse, or unplanned accidental death. The parent caretaker recognizes that the investigation into the child's death would potentially result in criminal charges against them. So the false claim of a missing or abducted child enables them to provide the explanation for the child's disappearance and to cover up the complicity in the child's death. These cases can be extremely challenging for the responding law enforcement agencies, as it can be difficult to distinguish between legitimate missing or abducted children and a falsely reported one. The purpose of this report is to furnish information and research in false allegations of child abduction in order to inform early responders in missing child cases and factors that represent an increased risk of false allegations to provide a better understanding of the dynamics of these types of cases and to identify investigative strategies that may be helpful in the resolution of. So we are going to get started on this. Guys, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for me. I appreciate you. So let's get started on this real quick. So I'm not saying anybody is doing this in this case, right? This is just a handbook. And I believe it's very important to go over this type of handbook because it's basically laying out everything that has been said by family and other people in this case. First, it shows you like the table of contents and stuff like that, right? We're just going to get down into the nitty gritty, right? I'm just going to kind of read through this very, very briefly. The report of an abducted child or a missing child under the suspicious circumstances generates an immediate law enforcement response, initiates an investigation that will involve and significantly affect not just the victim's family, but the surrounding neighborhood and community as well, which we know is the truth in this case, right? These cases can become extremely challenging for investigators as there are many potential explanations for children's disappearance and multiple avenues for investigation that must be pursued quickly. Children who are missing may have run away, become lost, injured, or may have fallen victim to a family abduction, a non-family abduction, or a homicide and a falsely alleged abduction. In most instances in which children are reported missing or have been abducted, there is little immediately obvious evidence. So, no evidence, right, Harley? That a crime has been committed. The child is simply gone from where they were last seen or where they were supposed to be. Early responders have to take the report of the child's disappearance at face value and base it on the early investigative efforts to inform and provide by the reporting party. Goes on to say, but there are times when the initial information provided by the reporting party is false. There are times when a parent or other caregiver is responsible for the death of a child, and then they falsely report the child has been abducted in order to explain the child's disappearance and to cover up the complicity in the child's death. In those instances, the searches, canvasses, and other investigative efforts may be focused in the wrong direction. The early recognition of factors suggests a potential false allegation case and can assist in investigators in focusing their efforts on investigative methods affecting and resolving the case, whether an offender is unknown or abductor or family member. All right. So I just kind of want to just browse through this. So, because this is a long case file, right? So it goes on to say research protocol, right? And I'm just going to show this part. The victim was less than 18 years old. The victim was reported to law enforcement agency as have been missing or have been abducted. All the time, the report to law enforcement, the victim had already been unalived or left for dead. At the time of the report to law enforcement, the reporting party knew or believed that the victim was already dead and not actually missing, or was induced to make a report on behalf of someone with knowledge. The case was adjudicated. All right. So we're going to go down here and it's going to show you some statistics, right? The single most significant indicator of false allegation case is the age of the victim, right? We know Jack and Lilly, 4 and 6, when they went missing. While false allegation cases can occur with any age, infant and toddler age victims were at the highest risk for family victimization and false allegations. The median age of the victims in the false allegation study is 3.4 years old. Over 2/3 of the victims were younger than 5 years of age. This finding is consistent with the results of other studies, which reflect that young children are victimized most often by family members. These results contrast with other cases of actual non-family abduction homicides in which the victims are generally older, averaging 11 to 12. Additionally, victims of non-family abduction homicides are predominantly female, whereas there is no significant difference in the gender or false allegation victims, 55% female, 45% male, right? For offender characteristics, I can't say this, geez. Characteristics. All right, can't talk today. The majority of the cases in the study, 77%, involved only one offender. The median age of the primary offenders was 27 years of age. And I point this out because I believe the mother in this case is 27, right? Primary offenders were split almost equally between males and females, right? The offenders typically suffered from a variety of financial, which is in this case, relationship, which is in this case, employment, which is in this case, and other challenges. Primary offenders in the study suffered from the domestic problems here, right? Okay. Relationship problems, check. Criminal history, which we don't know of that, right? Since Canada's got its privacy laws. Financial problems, check. Drug and alcohol, check. DV, check. Unemployment, check. We've heard of mental problems like illnesses, check. Employment problems. Now, we heard he's just working 1 day a week. I don't believe she had a job. Victim offender relationship. The individuals most likely to perpetrate a false allegation of child abduction were the biological parents of the victim, right? Now, in this case, we have a stepfather or boyfriend, right? But he looked at himself, remember, as the RCMP detective had spoke to Daniel in the car, and he says, I consider you to be the primary caregiver, right? They accounted for almost 2/3 of the offenders. Other offenders included step, foster, or adopted fathers and mothers, boyfriends, and other relatives or acquaintances. All the offenders were involved in some type of caregiving relationship with the victim and were residing in the same household as the victims. Table 2 represents the relationship of the primary offender to the victim based on the study. We have mother at 36%, father 24%, stepfather 14%, mother's boyfriend 12%, stepmother 8%, and 6% other. Family dynamics. Since the offenders in the false allegation cases were primarily family members or other individuals living in the household with the victim, an assessment of the family structure and household dynamics can be significant in the case of false allegations. In addition to general domestic problems suffered by the offenders, there was often evidence of household instability, which we do know of in this case. 58% of the cases, there was a change in the makeup of the family household within 6 months prior to the events. We heard Malaya was trying to leave prior to that, including someone moving into or out of the family residence, or the birth of a child, including the victim. Well, we know there was a new baby, right? She was 16 months when Jack and Lilly went missing, right? In 52% of the cases, there were periods of prolonged separation from the household in which the victim was unalived, or the victim had not always resided within that household. Remember, they moved in, I believe, in 2024, 2023, or something like that. False allegations victims were often maltreated with their families prior to the offense. 9% were the victims of physical abuse and was officially reported to law enforcement or social agencies like CAS. And 34% were victims of abuse that was not officially reported, and it was observed and described by family, neighbors, teachers, and other witnesses. 42% of the victims have been described by the offender of having special needs. They have potential autism, perhaps, or characteristics that place an increased burden on the offender in caring for the victim, putting the victims at increased risk for abuse or neglect. Motivation. Offenders can have a complex and varied reasons for committing their crimes, right? However, significant information was available, including confessions or other statements made by offenders, witness statements, forensic evidence, autopsy reports, and other information to the excess of most likely motivations or intentions of majority of the offenders in the study, right? Here we have unwanted, 37%, abuse, 35, revenge, 8, and sexual is 8, mental, 3, other, 10, right? Okay. Wow. What do you guys think about this? I want you to comment below. Offense characteristics. Characteristics. All right, I gotta say it fast to be able to get it out of my mouth. The majority of the victims in the study were unalived within their own homes, which is consistent with most incidences of family-related violence. When the location of the homicide was known, 68% of the victims in this study were unalived inside their own residence. Homicides of infants and toddler-age children are primarily caused by family and other caregivers, and the most common cause of death is blunt force trauma, asphyxiation, or suffocation. Young children spend most of their time in the company of their family members and other caretakers, and they have less of the care, for money, possessions, sexual development that would make them attractive targets for victimization by strangers. Their small stature leaves them vulnerable to acts of violence that would not necessarily be fatal for older children or adults. There's the table right here. Okay. Next, disposal, right? Disposal. One of the most challenging aspects of the investigation of false allegation cases is that bodies of the victims are often well hidden. While many of the deaths were spontaneous and or unplanned, once the offender made the decision to cover up the death by alleging the child was missing/abducted, many offenders were able to plan and execute an effective means of disposal, right? The body 63 out of 71 victims in the study were recovered. Locations of 28, 44% of the recovered victims were furnished by the offenders during statements to authorities, right? Another 32% were discovered accidentally by hikers, hunters, and other individuals who were not searching for the victim. Only 21% of the victims' bodies were recovered by searchers who were actively searching for them. Offenders, they use a wide range of disposal methods, including putting bodies in dumpsters or trash cans, placing them into bodies of water, hiding them under brush or trash, burying them into graves, or simply leaving them in a rural area where no one would be likely to discover them. Right. Based upon their location and the method of disposal, it is estimated that 20 out of the 28 victims whose recovery locations were furnished by the offenders would never have been recovered without the offender revealing their location. Therefore, when those 20 are considered along with the 8 bodies that were never recovered, approximately 44% of the total victims were either never recovered or were only recovered due to statements made by the offender. This is a significant impediment to a successful investigation. I just want to reiterate that. This is a significant impediment to a successful investigation. The study identified several patterns which may assist in the direction of search efforts. In the vast majority of cases, the bodies were disposed of outside. Only 13% of the bodies were recovered inside a residence, garage, or other enclosed structure. Some offenders traveled significant distances to dispose of the bodies outside of the out of the search area, while 41% of the bodies were located within a mile of the location from which they were reported abducted. Slightly less than a quarter of the bodies were located more than 10 miles away from where they were reported missing. And 16% of the bodies were recovered more than 30 miles away. In this case, I always point to 10 miles either way from the house. Just my thoughts. A high percentage of 77% of the bodies that were recovered outdoors were located along or near roadways. That's why I'm always looking on Google Earth, the most updated one. 47% of those bodies were located within 100 feet of a paved road. And another 24% were located within 100 feet of a paved road. 6% were located in parking lots. Burials were done more often by male offenders, who accounted for 8 out of the 12 buried bodies. All 6 victims that were placed in trash cans or dumpsters were 5 years age or younger. That is just horrible. Younger victims were more likely to be found closer to the reported abduction site than older victims. Over half of the victims' ages 5 or under, 52%, were found within a mile of the reported abduction site, where areas less than 16% of the victims older than age 5 were located within a mile of the reported abduction site. Almost half of 47% of the victims older than the age of 5 were found between 2 and 10 miles from the reported abduction site. Okay. Investigative factors. There are multiple factors related to the successful resolution of the false allegations in this study. But the key factors were recovery of the victim's body. Just want to state that right there. And the confession of the offender. The recovery of the victim's body was a key factor in the resolution of 65% of the cases, right? So I'm going to attach this to my video if you guys want to read the full PDF. I'm just going to read a couple more lines here, and we're going to go to something really strange. If you are still with me, please hit that like button. I appreciate you for hanging out with me today and going over this information. So this goes on to say parental caregiver interaction with law enforcement. Crucial information about the victims and the circumstances of their disappearance, right? It should be noted that there may be times when a parent or caregiver of a missing child provides false information to investigators, even when they are not responsible for the disappearance and or death of the victim, right? Because parents and other caregivers generally want to be viewed as caring, responsible, and attentive caregivers. They may provide false or misleading information about the timing of the disappearance, the level of supervision provided to the victim, and or some other aspect of the case that they may believe may negatively affect their image. In other cases, parents, caregivers may have specific theories about the reasons for the disappearance, and they may make up stories to distort the facts in order to support those theories. Okay? All right, you guys. I'm going to read through the risk factors, and then we're going to go on to that really strange video I'm going to show you. In this case, the victim is under the age of 5, although it could occur with any child, right? There is no confirmed witnesses to the alleged abduction other than the reporting party. The victim's family environment is suffering from financial, relationship, employment, and other stressful domestic problems, such as drug use or DV. The victim's family environment is suffering from a lot of problems in this one, right? There was prior criminal activity by the parents' caregivers. Now, we do know that there was prior CAS out there for abuse and or neglect. Black eyes on the children, right? Multiple. There is instability of the makeup of the family household in which the victim was residing at the time of disappearance, including individuals moving in and out of the household within the last 6 months prior to the offense. There were periods of prolonged separation from the family household in which the victim was residing at the time of the disappearance, or victim had not always resided within that household. They just moved in a few years prior, right? There was prior physical abuse by parents or caregivers. Okay, you guys, what do you think? What do you think? I want to hear your comments below. Before I let you go for the day, I want to show you something very odd. And I will put the link to that PDF so you guys can watch it. Now, what you're about to view is a video from me 7 months ago. This would have been on May 24th, 2025, right? This is 22 days after Jack and Lilly Sullivan disappeared from their home in Landsdowne Station, Nova Scotia. I want you to watch this. This is before any type of theory, right, that Malaya had given the children to somebody, or Janie had come out about her hearing anybody. I just find it very, very strange that what I speak about in this video is almost exact to what has been said with bad people taking the kids, with hearing of a rug party, with all the allegations and stuff that had come out. This video is just eerily coincidental. Give me 1 second. I'm going to blow this up for you. And we're going to get it started. About the Lilly and Jack case. So I have a theory about the Lilly and Jack case. Hear me out. So now the recent update is local police is asking for people's game cameras to catch any vehicles in the area that shouldn't be there, because it's a rural area. Not many people. At the time that I made this video, our CMP came out and wanted game cams, right? From Melissa Scott's interview. Remember Melissa Scott? Right? That lives over in Glengarry Station. That's when I made this video. Go through on that road. So if there's any vehicles that just randomly came in the area during the time of their disappearance, they want to see those game cameras and look at the footage. Now, hear me out on this. So if it is true that they did have a party on Wednesday or Thursday night, and say Dan, the stepdad, had a friend over, that seems shady, and the friend was scouting out the home for kids, okay, because not a very good person. He's scouting out the home for the kids, and he left that night, the friend of Dan's, okay, and then he planned on grabbing these kids when the kids were outside by themselves, okay? This would make sense as the police are looking now for vehicles that shouldn't be in the area. This would make sense on why Malaya has distanced herself from Dan, okay? Because she's pissed off because he had a friend. Okay, I'm going to pause it right there for a minute. Well, we do know that there was reports that just came out, right, with the neighbors saying two guys, right? One lives at one end, the other lives at the other, saying they heard a vehicle that night. One even went to giving specific areas, right, of where this vehicle went. And police went and grabbed as much trail cam footage as they could. Now, one of these areas in Glengarry Station isn't one of the areas the neighbors said they heard the car. But now we have the third cousin came out last night and said, yes, the neighbor was telling the truth about the car. It was actually Daniel. So Daniel must have had admitted to the third cousin that he was out partying that night. Listen. Over that was scouting out the kids. This would also make sense on why Malaya would leave the home, because she believes that the kids are not in the woods, which I don't believe the kids ever went into the woods. This would also make sense on why she wanted to push an Amber Alert, because she believes this person or one of the people that came over for the party took the children. Okay? Now, doesn't this sound familiar? Doesn't this sound like when you heard the third cousin come out last night and say that they had some bad people that they were hanging around with that do bad things to children? Doesn't this sound very familiar? I'm not insinuating on anything. I just find it coincidental that I mentioned something like this, and shortly after, a story like this pops up. First, it was Native people, then it was CAS, and now it's bad people. So this all kind of makes sense here. And now that the police are asking for game cameras, trail cameras, to see what cars should not have been driving around in that neighborhood on the day that they went missing. So this is all starting to make kind of sense. Do you see what I'm saying? So mom pushes the Amber Alert. Okay, she doesn't believe they went into the woods. She believes someone took Lilly and Jack. All right. I honestly believe this is what's going on, because if she's blaming Dan, she's not blaming him exactly, because he was laying in bed with her. Why would she blame him? Other than she would blame him for having somebody over the house that seems suspect that would take the children. Okay. So what do you guys think? Leave your comment down below and let me know what you think about this. All right, it's kind of odd, right? I want you to let me know what you think about everything that we went over today. So we went over questions that I have for the third cousin, right? With the stories of Malaya handed the kids off, or she, bad people came and took them, or she was hiding them from CAS. I did a theory on that one too. It's called the CPS theory. You can go and look at that. It's down in the Jack and Lilly playlist. Then we went over our FBI behavioral sciences, right? On false allegations of child abductions for missing children. Then we also showed the video that we just watched, my theory from May 24th, before all of this stuff came out about Malaya giving the children to somebody. So I want you to leave your comments below. I really want to hear from you. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate you for watching this episode of Jack and Lilly, this episode of Daphne's Detention for Jack and Lilly Sullivan. Have a great day.